Welcome back to Medieval Dynasty. In this video, we will be completing the main storylines following Alwyn, Sambor, and Unigast. So if you haven't seen part 1 and 2, I suggest you go back and check those out. Otherwise, let's continue our journey. Right now, we find ourselves in the middle of New Gustovia. Our village is now inhabited with some good workers, but we will still need a few villagers to join our ranks. I took some time to build some new houses for said villagers before heading off to Branica to invite Frida into the village. Taking her place is our second lumberjack. With a second lumberjack, I will have a way to support all of my future wagoning trips by selling everyone in the valley my finest wooden vials. I also picked up a potion from the herbalist that I would soon need. More on that later. Then it was off to Hornica, where we'd finally be able to meet Sambor and Unigast's old friend Kestrel. Hornica was a bit of ways away, so I decided to take the wagoner there. A decent amount of villagers had the skills I was looking for, so I was able to invite Godfried and Wiltruda to move into New Gustovia, making them barn workers for the time being. After setting them up in their own houses and jobs, I searched for Kestrel. I was not expecting to find her in such an unsightly manner. She was on the floor, babbling nonsense, and completely drunk. This is where the potion I bought earlier comes in handy. Now would be a good time to mention I had some recording issues early on, and had gotten this far only to find out my video quality was ruined, so I had to redo this part all over again. So to save time, I figured I could pick up the potion early and save myself the trip. So yeah, my bad. But Kestrel was sober now, after I gave her the potion, and I could finally hear what she had to say about her adventures with Unigast and my uncle. 12 years back, their band found this valley that we live in today, and their endgame was to settle down here, but they had to complete one final mission: steal back stolen loot from a town hall treasury. After completing the heist, Eordan went missing, so Kestrel went out looking for him. She found him standing over the dead body of their informant, and Eordan was very angry that Kestrel wasn't waiting for him at the horses. It wasn't like Eordan to kill someone, let alone not be fazed by it. Kestrel told the band what happened when he returned. Eordan broke the trust of the pack, and was caught in lie after lie. By the next dawn, Wolrad had left, then Sambor, which led to the pack disbanding altogether. When asked about her affair with Unigast, she said she believed Eordan knew the entire time, and simply didn't care, only wanting the pack to be happy. She also relayed that she knew that the child wasn't his either, it was Unigast's, but refusing to let either of them know. And if that wasn't enough of a bombshell, she dropped another one on me, telling me that she believed my uncle Eordan didn't succumb to his old age, but that he was in fact murdered, with his body being burned the same day. I asked for any leads, and she gave me the location of the medic who burned his body, which wasn't too far out of town, so I went there. I met this medic, Dieter, who seemed super suspicious about the entire situation, urging I drop the topic, being afraid for his life. I offered him a ticket out of the valley if he gave me any answers to his cause of death, or possible suspects, which he agreed to. He asked for a horse, an escort, and some supplies to prepare for departure, so I filled Kestrel in on his demands. Not before stealing everything the medic had, though, because for some reason it wasn't considered stealing? I don't know. Kestrel told me she would take care of the horse, but that I would need to go get some coin, meat, water skin, and his escort, a man by the name of Domagoj. Domagoy? Domagoj? Domagoy. I figured I could make it to his place before the end of the season, so I made my way to Jizerica before sundown. Domagoy said he could take him, but not without getting his crossbow back, which he had lost in a game of riddles. I swear, this riddle lady's finessing everybody in this entire valley. It wasn't worth it to me to walk all the way back home this night, so I found a nice view on top of a mountain to wait for the new season. After being magically teleported back home, I set my traps and visited Alwyn. He wanted me to help him find the hunter who sold bows, so together we went across the river to ask Falibor where this hunter was. Gisela lived in Lesnica, so I headed off to Lesnica after making one small trip to New Gustovia, and noticed Edburga had a new quest for me. She wanted to have a special evening together, and asked me to pick up some wine that she ordered. I guess this was as good of a time as ever, because it was about time I had an heir. You hear that, Alwyn? I'm getting laid tonight. But first, Lesnica. We met up with Gisela, the bad-tempered huntress, and picked up a longbow for Alwyn. Now that Alwyn was set for the season, I took the wagoner back to Gustovia and picked up my wine my wife ordered. Our night of passionate activities was put on hold, however, because some lady in Branica was being ousted. So after building a chicken coop, I found Georgiana and Branica. Not to be confused with Branica right next door. It would have been less confusing if they named it something like New Branica, but that's not important. Supposedly, she was scammed into believing she bought the land in Branica. Knowing that's not how the law worked in the valley, I offered her a place to live in New Gustovia. Another good villager with some nice stats. I'll likely have her work in the chicken coop I built. Edburga was satisfied though, so needless to say, we were both satisfied. Next morning I built Georgiana a house and bought some chickens for the hen house. Alwyn wanted to build an archery range, so I helped him do so, before showing him my pro archery skills. Well, third time's a charm. Next season we were back with Alwyn, but this time he bet 100 coins I couldn't beat his score in 3 shots. Child's play, I say. My archery skills were too good for the farm boy. For the next season I took the time to build a fishing hut, but probably wouldn't get much use out of it till now. I still hadn't learned how to fish aside from a few hunting traps I laid down, which also seemed expensive because it would cost me a linen thread over time. I also created a pigsty and picked up a few pigs, which would passively provide me manure, saving me from having to spend coin on fertilizer from now on. Next season, Alwyn had a new competition in mind. Kill a bear in 8 hours' time. Luckily, I knew a bear spawn that was not too far from here, so I went back to the mountains, claimed my bear, and went mining since I was here already. When I returned to Alwyn, he admitted I was the better hunter, and told me he was giving up the archery life, giving up his bow to me. I was not pleased with this outcome, but I held onto his bow in case things changed in the future. The next morning, Edburga came to me, saying it was an emergency, and that her belly wasn't feeling well, telling me to find the nearest herbalist quick. Naturally, I went to Norbert in Branica to see what he thought about it, and told me she'd be fine, but to be safe, would come with me to check on her. I filled a water skin and went back to Edburga only for her to tell me that it was simply indigestion. Better safe than sorry, I guess? I wasn't doing much this winter anyway, aside from village maintenance and spamming wooden vials to support my Wagoner trips. This Wagoner has gotten rich off of me, I can tell you that. Randomly, I went to go see Sambor to see if there was anything new going on. There wasn't really, but I did find some nice little wooden figures laying around some clay deposits. I asked Sambor about them, and he seemed embarrassed, until I told him how nice they were. He told me he tried making a living on these figurines, but a businesswoman of the valley that deals with artwork and ornaments was cutthroat and hard to sell them off to. I told him I could try my hand at selling them to her, which was fine by him. I took the Wagoner to Denica to meet this businesswoman. Her name was Fenina, and she was much younger than I was expecting for a prominent businesswoman. And her being cutthroat was an understatement. She was ruthless. She said she would buy the figurines, though, if I helped her get a special item for a buyer she had. I went to my favorite medicine man, Norbert, to create the Elixir of Cosmic Might. Turns out the name was just fancy for a potion of potency. Oh. Anyways, I got the ingredients and had the liquid Viagra made before returning to Fenina. I gave her the instructions on how her client needed to use it before returning back tomorrow. But before that time could come, my son was officially born. I wanted to name him Rasimir Jr., but that wasn't in the options, so Radagast would have to do. My dynasty was complete, but there was still lots to do in the valley. Upon returning to Fenina, she told me her client was furious and that the potion didn't work at all. At this point, client privacy went out the window and she told me to talk to the man herself. So it was off to Bogdan of Branica to find out what was going on. He was very angry and accusing me of attempting to mutilate him. I asked him if he drank it 3 times a day, and it was at this point he informed me that he made a tremendous mistake. Clearly he somehow misused the potion. This was going to be hard to explain to Fenina, but Bogdan sincerely apologized to me and gave me payment. It was back to Denica to bring payment to Fenina. That was kind of hard to say. She was satisfied, so she told me she would be willing to buy my figurines for 1 gold apiece. I've been bamboozled by this child. I should have expected this much at this point. She also mentioned she was leaving the valley, concluding that there was some serious business to conduct elsewhere. Not if I can help it. I tried everything, but there was no use. I returned to Sambor and told her that she bought the figurines. He was super excited and asked me how much I made, and I couldn't bear to tell him the truth. I gave him 1,000 coins, and he was ecstatic. I also bought a couple for myself and let him bask in his newly found wealth. I was going to have to make extra wooden vials this season, that was almost certain. Once again, I went to go check on Alwyn, and he was back to his old, sad self. I could see him disassociating as I spoke with him. Something had to be done. His dreams were crushed over a silly little competition. I had to go back to the Huntress and see if anything could be done for him. I pretty much begged her to make him her apprentice. She said that she may have an opportunity for him, but that he would have to bring her something special to prove that he was worthy. I journeyed back to Alwyn, who still hadn't moved an inch since I last saw him. I hate to see the guy like this, man, I really do. But I told him the Huntress had plans for the young Alwyn. I was still holding on to his bow, but that didn't seem like it would be good enough. I had to find a better bow for the lad. I bought a nice recurve bow from Gisela to give to Alwyn. I handed him the bow so he could have a better chance of hunting the local bison. I gave him a few more tips before I said goodbye. I would hope that one day I would hear from the great hunter Alwyn, but for now it was time to let the guy go. He gave me his iron hoe and iron scythe and left Gastovia to become the hunter he was truly meant to be. Farewell, Alwyn. Farewell. Alright, returning back to Kestrel's quest. It was time to meet this riddle lady for the second time now, and she offered pity on me. Instead of a riddle, I would need to find her fresh fish. A part of me wished it was a second riddle, but fish will have to do. I didn't have a working fishing hut, or really know how to fish, so I traveled around the valley buying up any fish that I could find. It didn't take too long to find, so I traded the fish for the crossbow, dropped the crossbow off to Domagoj, and made my way back to Kestrel to deliver all of the supplies. Now that we had everything we needed, we could finally get some answers from our old medic. When I returned to the medic, he told me his story. He said he was awakened in the middle of the night due to an accident, and that someone was in need for his attention. He was taken to the Castellan's house and found out something happened to him. When he went inside the house, he found Jordan. At this point, it was clear it was no accident. Jordan's throat was cut, and the medic found himself cornered. The cloaked figure that brought him here told him to burn the body as soon as it stopped raining, so that people would presume it was a disease. They moved the body, cleaned the blood, and burned the sheets along with him. After a few weeks, Dieter left Gastovia in fear for his life, because the same man that killed Jordan was now Castellan of the Valley. Unigost. Honestly, after Kestrel said that she believed he was murdered, I thought it may have been Sambor, the former torturer, or even Wolrad, but Unigost and Jordan were best friends. It wasn't so believable to me that he would kill him out of jealousy or power after that long. I needed to talk to him, and when confronted about Jordan's death, there was little fight in him. He admitted to killing Jordan. He said it wasn't because of what he did to Kestrel, because they all played a role in that love triangle. It wasn't about vengeance or jealousy of wanting to become the Castellan either. It was Jordan's own corruption. Unigost was the only one to stay near Jordan after the pact disbanded. Jordan's ambition led him to meet with the king alone, and when he came back, he returned with the title Castellan of the Valley, and began to act as a true leader. But Unigost knew what he was hiding from them. Being afraid that Unigost would see a shift in moral compass, they grew distant, which is when the worst came out of Jordan. He became the very thing that the pact fought against. A corrupted lord, whoring around, taking advantage of the poor, making money off of wars, and befriending rapists to gain their favor. Unigost said that this brought him immense guilt, and knew he had to be the one to stop it. So on that fateful night, he snuck into his house during a heavy rain, and killed him with one clean slice to the throat. After hearing the stories from Kestrel, Sambor, and Unigost about Uncle Jordan, it was clear to me that he was not a flawless soul. At the start of their journeys together, he and the pack had the right intentions, but there was always something Jordan was hiding from them, and his ambition caused him to become jaded and corrupted by the world, becoming what he and his friends swore to fight against. Jordan was a murderer, and was willing to murder for less. At least that's how I saw it. So a part of me felt more compassion towards Unigost in the story, even though his actions were not excusable. Unigost was an honest man in the end, and was not going to fight against whatever fate I chose for him. I could have had him killed if I so decided, but I couldn't do it. Although Jordan was my uncle, I never met the guy. And Unigos had done so much to help me in the time I had spent in the valley so far, so I gave him the lightest punishment. I had him exiled from the valley, never to return. A part of me hoped I could allow him to stay and just take his titles away from him and make him a hermit just like Sambor was. But exiled was a far better fate than death. The valley was feeling especially gloomy lately, now with Alwyn and Unigos gone, but I could always visit Sambor if I was feeling lonely. On top of that, I had Edburga and Radagast to take care of, along with a dozen other inhabitants of New Gustovia. Our journey in this chapter to the valley had come to an end, and it was time to expand our town even further, starting with obtaining my first mount. I wish I had gotten this donkey earlier, honestly. It would have saved me a lot of coin traveling from place to place. But this concludes our series of Medieval Dynasty. I'm considering making a few tutorials on how to do certain things. So if that sounds interesting to you, consider dropping a like and subscribing to the channel. And let me know in the comments if there are any games you would like to see in future As Intended videos. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.